Hi, Zorkki here. Let's talk killers. We all know that some are too weak, some are too strong, so today I want to share my thoughts on killer changes I think would be good, starting with Old Faithful, Trapper. So we all know he's heavily RNG reliant. If you get bad spawns, then you basically just lose the game straight away. If you get good spawns, then that can be good for you. Also, depending on where the shack is, can you actually lock down the shack? Can you lock down generators at the start of the game? So I think the Trapper sack should be base kit. Getting rid of the part at the bottom where they cannot be picked up, allow him to still pick them up, but just allow him basically to start with them. Everyone has suggested this. It would just eliminate RNG, allow him to actually start the game straight away, rather than essentially nearly always starting the game like one or two generators behind. This would, bring him back into the modern era of Dead by Daylight. The other one would be the Trapper gloves, just to increase the setting speed by 30%. Honestly, it does take quite a long time to put his traps down, and I think if you give base kit 30% speed, it will just allow him to use his traps in chase more, actually, as a power. The other thing that I would change about Trapper would be to not allow him to place traps within 12 meters of hooks. I've heard this quite commonly as well over the years, and I do believe this should be implemented. Okay, so next let's talk about Wraith. One of my favorites, but honestly very weak. You very rarely see him nowadays. So some of my suggested changes are simply to add some of his add-ons as base kit. The first one being the White Shadow Dance add-on, which allows him to damage walls, pallets, generators, and vault windows, all 40% faster while cloaked. I believe that would be a great addition to him, just to allow him to add a bit more pressure in the game, which he currently lacks. Secondly would be the White Swift Hunt add-on as well. That allows him to uncloak 10% faster. I believe that's a great change, because honestly, anyone who's even just got a few hundred hours in this game, and has even maybe just watched some videos, like from Ots for example, understands that to outplay Wraith, you just stand at windows, you just stand at pallets until he uncloaks, and you force him to uncloak, and then you stun him. And he gets, while he's cloaked, if you stun him, it's a really long stun as well. So it's really, really easy to play against the Wraith. And I believe just something base kit to uncloak fast would just allow him to be a lot more lethal in chase, which currently he's just not. The third one, just a simple little change, something which would make him a bit more unique, and I think it's just a nice little sort of quality of life change, would be the Hound add-on, again as base kit. All that does is simply just makes blood appear brighter when he's cloaked. Just give him slightly better tracking ability. That would really help new players pick him up as well. I think that would be a fantastic change to Wraith, and honestly, he's okay, but just these three add-ons as base kit, I think would be a really nice change. And personally, I'd probably use him more if he had them, because currently he's quite hard to use. So, yeah, those are my changes for the Wraith. Let me know what you think about those ones. Okay, moving on to old Billy Boy. Favorite of mine, love playing against him. Not so much as him, because I suck, honestly, but watching a good Billy player is awesome. Really, really awesome. I believe he needs a few tweaks. He's been nerfed and nerfed and nerfed and nerfed over the years, to the point that, quite frankly, he's just really rubbish now. So there's a few changes that, obviously, I'm going to suggest here. The first one, remove overheat. Unless he's within 8 meters of a hook. Then, in which case, allow it to overheat and make it faster than it currently is, because he's super oppressive if someone's on the hook and he wants to camp it. Let's try and maybe just make it a bit harder for him to camp. Not impossible, but just a bit harder. Yeah, definitely just remove the overheat. Why is that even a thing? Just remove it. Let Billy do Billy things, like zoom around the map. That's what he does. The second one would be the Dad's Boots, would be base kit. All that does simply just increase his turn speed by 28% while he's using his chainsaw. I think that would be a really good addition, honestly, especially for newer players who are unfamiliar with Billy. Without that add-on, it's incredibly difficult to use him. So I think that should definitely be base kit. And the other base kit one, you have to let me know what you think about this one. But I think low pro should be base kit. I know it's, I think it's purple, but honestly, it's a great addition, because people who just pre-drop against Billy, if you just want to win against Billy, just pre-drop pallets constantly. And it's just incredibly easy to outplay, Billy by doing that. Whereas if he's got low pro, it means you're actually going to have to think about what you're doing. You can't just pre-drop, go to the next pallet, pre-drop, and just keep doing that. So those would be my suggested changes for him. Okay, moving on to our girl Sally, the nurse. What to do with the nurse? It's obvious she's way too strong. Just unfathomably, just way too strong. We'll start with the add-ons. The add-ons alone are just too powerful. She has an add-on called the Torn Bookmark that gives her an extra blink. No, get rid of that. That should never be a thing. The second one is Jenna's Last Breath, which allows her to, essentially after she's used all of her blinks, if you can hit it before the fatigue kicks in, you then allow her to return to the last blink position. It then recharges an extra blink, which means you can then blink again, which means you kind of get 4, if I can count. I mean, either way, it's just no. Just no. She should only ever have 2 blinks in any situation. Any more than that is just silly. She's too strong as it is. So get rid of those. Secondly, how to just bring her base power down, just so it's a bit more reasonable. I would say the first blink can go through walls like it currently can. Second blink cannot. That's how I would say you can bring her power to be a bit more reasonable, and just allow a bit more outplay. Just second blink cannot go through walls. Second blink has to be a line of sight blink. Those are my suggested changes. Obviously, it's a controversial subject talking about the nurse and what to do with her, but those are my suggested changes. Let me know what you think about those ones. Okay, so Huntress. The first and most obvious change, fix the hitboxes, both the survivor hitboxes, because for those who don't know, the hitbox is based on the positioning of your feet. So when survivors are running forwards, obviously they lean forwards. If the hatchet hits behind them, but it's in line with their feet, it still counts as a hit. They need to fix that. That's really bad. But also on the Huntress's side, the hitboxes are also really bad. With objects, there are certain objects, and especially like a lot of boxes and things on maps, where clearly your axe looks like it goes over it, but it hits like a hitbox above the actual object, and it's really, really infuriating. So yeah, fix the hitboxes. They're really, really bad. They need fixing. Secondly, I would make her base kit hatchet count to 4. I would remove one of them. 5 is quite a lot, especially with a good Huntress player. And when you put the the utility belt on to have 2, you've got Huntress running around with 7 hatchets. It's just game over. Honestly, bring it down to 4. I think that would just balance her out a little bit. The other changes I would make would be the deerskin gloves base kit. That, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, I wrote it down, but I can't remember what the actual what it actually does. I think it's 20% faster reloads lockers. That should be basically just allow her to reload faster. The incredibly, obviously Iron Maiden exists, but yeah, just give her the deerskin gloves anyway. The other thing that I would give her is the wooden fox, but only if reloading from empty. What the wooden fox does is when you reload, you gain undetectable status for 30 seconds. I think that would make the Huntress more unique. Nice little bit of stealth when she reloads, but again, only if she reloads from empty, because otherwise you just throw a hatchet and then reload, right? So yeah, that would balance the Huntress out quite a lot, I feel. Those are my suggested changes. I really like those, and honestly, I wish they would bring those changes. Mikey Boy. Right, Mikey Boy is one of those weird killers where he's deemed as very weak, but at the same time, can also be incredibly strong. And it's very add-on dependent. Let's be honest, Tombstone or Infinite Tier 3 dependent. If you don't have those add-ons, yeah, if you've got a good player, he can be very good. But if not, generally he's sort of very mid, very sort of lower than mid, to be completely honest. Can be very difficult to use. The most obvious change is to either just remove Tombstone. It's an outdated mechanic and it kind of needs to go, or change it so instead of the insta-kill, what I would suggest is that you do stab them in the same way that you currently do, but rather than him throwing them to the side and they're just dead and out of the game, he just puts them on his shoulder, ready straight away to be hooked. So it's just, so it makes you essentially one hit down someone, but you then don't have to waste time picking them up and things like that, and you throw them straight into your shoulder. I think that would be a good change to Tombstone, just to essentially allow really fast downs and hooks. Or the third option to this, yeah, there's a lot to talk about Tombstone, would be to keep it as it is currently, where you can insta-kill, but make it so it only works on the last hook stage, so it's essentially like a Mori, but a quick Mori, because you don't have to down them then do the Mori, because obviously we all know how Tombstone works. So kind of like a Mori, but better, if that makes sense. Those are some of my suggestions for Tombstone, but either way, it needs to be changed. Currently, it's way too strong, at least against average players. Good players know how to outplay it, but even then, what can you do? Like, slow vault, pallets, windows, things like that. Just, and, you know, lockers, maybe you can try an item tech him, drop an item, but even then, it's incredibly difficult to do if you're just an average player. And a lot of people don't even know you can do that sort of thing to outplay him. The other changes that I would recommend to him is his Infinite Tier 3. The Infinite Tier 3 is incredibly powerful. I think it should take longer to get. I believe currently it's marked as it takes 200% longer to get to Tier 3. I think it should be 300%. It's really not that hard to get to Infinite Tier 3. I think it should be a lot harder to get to for something as powerful as that. Okay, next we've got Lisa, aka the Hag. First thing I would honestly say, increase her to 115%. Currently she's 110. I know she has traps, but the traps aren't really all that powerful, so I would say increase her to 115%. So the next change would be 2 add-ons that I believe should become base kit. The first one being the Dragonfly Wings. That increases your teleport range by 25%. Second one is the Cypress Necklet. That allows you to set your Phantasm traps 20% faster. That would just be a really nice change for her. Secondly, this is more of a nerf to her, because this is part of the oppressive side of the Hag, is I believe you should not be able to place the traps within 12 meters of hooks. Currently, you can just place like 9 traps around someone on a hook, and honestly, especially with the camera locking thing that they added recently, so I believe they should put a limit of 12 meters, which also leads me to the second part of the camera locking. They just remove it. If you don't know what I mean, if you've not played against Hag very often, but this is something new they added. I believe it used to be an add-on, but they added it as base kit, where when you trigger one of the Phantasm traps, your camera locks onto them and you then have to look away again. I hate that. I hate that. That should go. It's just really obnoxious to play against, and honestly, it's really quite powerful as well. I think that add-on being base kit is too powerful, and I believe it should go, or just be an add-on again. Okay, the Doctor. I love the Doctor. He's awesome. Love playing against him. I love playing as him. He's just so much fun. First one, this is just a add-on I think should be base kit, which is called the Moldy Electrode. Shut up, Doctor. It's literally just a brown add-on, and all it does is it increases the range of shock therapy by 2 meters. Great change. By default, shock therapy is actually way too short, and actually 2 meters would just make him just more viable in chase. Secondly, what I would also do is the illusionary doctors that you see, I believe those should be animated. So rather than just standing there looking at you, they should almost do what he's doing here in the lobby screen. Where he kind of does do that, but all he does is stand there, whereas every so often he hits his bat and things like that. He should also like laugh at the survivors, things like that. Maybe make him look like he's running just on the spot, not actually running, but just running on the spot. Just make him a bit more spooky, a bit more nerve-wracking to play against, make him a bit more scary. The other changes would be, I might have to explain this one, but less slowdown when using shock therapy. Currently, while you're using your shock therapy, you're slowed down to 3.08 meters a second, which is very, very, very slow, and makes him quite tricky to use in chase. With experience, it becomes a bit easier, but it still can be tricky against good survivors. I think they should change that to be 3.8 meters a second while you're using shock therapy, make him more viable in chase, because, yeah, as I said, he's quite hard to use in chase at the minute because of that. His power slows you down too much, and I believe they should reduce that slowdown. That would just make him way more viable in chase. The last change would be to increase the range of Static Blast to 4 meters above the terror radius. Currently, the way Static Blast works is the distance of Static Blast is tied into how big your terror radius is, which is obviously why a lot of killers, a lot of people who play Doctor will use things to increase your terror radius, because then you can Static Blast much further. But what I would recommend is to increase it 4 meters above whatever your terror radius is. If you've got add-ons to increase your terror radius, cool. Still allow it to be 4 meters bigger than that terror radius, because Currently, yeah, its static glass is kind of meh. Unless, you know, you're on an indoor map like Larry's or something like that. But on most maps, it's pretty pooey, to be completely honest. So yeah, those are my changes for Doc. I'd love to see those changes. Awesome, awesome killer. Absolutely love the guy. He's hilarious. Thanks, Doc. Moving on to the Cannibal, aka Bubba, aka Booba Booba Booba. I think this is just an obvious one. He shouldn't be able to use his chainsaw within 8 meters of a hook. 8 meters, I would say, is roughly 3/4 the length of Shack. Maybe a little bit over 3/4. It's really hard to judge because the tile is 16, but the shack itself is not 16. I think the shack is roughly 10 meters. So 8 meters, yeah, it's roughly 3/4. So just allow him to, or sorry, prevent him from using his chainsaw within that distance. Not to make it totally impossible to camp, because that's kind of what Bubba is about, but just make it a little bit easier to try and, like, unhook people. I think it would be fun, more fun than it currently is. Secondly, fix collision. His collision is absolutely diabolical, especially on like maps with a lot of trees and bushes and things. Like, you can walk through them, you can M1 through them, but your chainsaw gets caught on them, and it is, they need to fix it. It is really dumb. Secondly, or should I say thirdly, they should reduce the pallet and breakable wall lock-on range and angle. That sounds weird, but essentially, if you're using your chainsaw as Cannibal and you're near a pallet or a breakable wall, that's like a lock-on mechanic. So a good way to outplay him as a survivor is if you're near a pallet or a door, stand and he's using his chainsaw, you can crouch in the corner of the pallet or crouch next to the door, and it will prioritize locking onto the pallet or the door. So it's a really good way of outplaying him, but as the Bubba, that's very, very frustrating. Also, sometimes, for example, on Ormond, if you're walking upstairs on the balcony part, if you're using your chainsaw, that door, the breakable door up there, just it's a magnet for Bubba. Even if you're not really near it or looking at it, it like fully locks you onto it. So they need to fix that. That's a massive issue with Bubba. Other than that, he's kind of cool, to be completely honest. When I was a newer player, absolutely hated him. Now that I'm experienced, I love playing against Bubba. One of my favourite killers to play against. I never really play as him because I don't really find him fun to play as, to be honest, but playing against him is hilarious fun. It's one of the most fun killers in the game, 100%. So just make a few changes to him, and he's golden. GG, buddy! What a cute little Bubba. So next, we have Spirit. I believe she's strong, but pretty balanced. The only things I would really change are a couple of her strongest add-ons, being the MDR, the Mother-Daughter Ring, and the Dried Cherry Blossom. What the Dried Cherry Blossom does is if you become within 4 meters of Survivor during the phase, it triggers Killer Instinct. For those unfamiliar, it's essentially the red heartbeat thing that you see, for example, on Legion. Yeah, so what I would do is change the Killer Instinct trigger range from 4 meters to 3 meters, just making it a little bit harder to use. Secondly, MDR, currently that gives you a 40% movement buff. I would change that to 20%, maybe 30%. But honestly, those are the only things I really change about Spirit. When I play against Spirit, I don't really feel that she's too oppressive, unless she's running that combo of the Dried Cherry Blossom and the MDR. Other than that, yeah, she's pretty fun to play against. She's fairly well balanced, strong, but not too strong, especially not like she was when she was first released. So yeah, just a couple of changes to her, and I think she'd be just a little bit more in tune with the current balance of Dead by Daylight. Okay, so next we have the Legion. Quite a simple change, just delete it from the game. No, okay, I'm joking. The Legion is easily, I would say, the most disliked killer in the game, purely because of, unfortunately, how boring and repetitive and tedious it is to play against the Legion. I think if they're gonna stop people hating the Legion so much, they need to either remove the mend mechanic completely, or just make it take like 2 seconds and remove the add-ons that increase the mend time. Simple as that. Like, other than just deleting the character, in my opinion, I'm sorry to say this, I really hate the Legion. Just because of how boring and tedious she is to play against. The only real solution I can see to the way she is currently is just to remove the mend mechanic. I think that's the main grief that people have with this killer. yeah, I don't know. I'd love to hear some of your suggestions about Legion. What would you change? And it's not to do with how strong or how weak she is, to be honest. I think in terms of strength, she's kind of weak. But survivors play this game to have fun. Most of them, obviously. Some people take this game way too seriously, but Legion's just not fun. That's the main complaint. She's just not fun. So yeah, I'd love to hear like what you guys think about Legion and how you can make her a bit more fun to play against. Because currently, yeah, she is. They are, I guess, because it's Legion. Easily my most disliked character. As soon as I see a Legion in the lobby, my instant reaction is just, because yeah, boring, very boring. Then moving on to the Plague. This is going to be a very easy one. Wouldn't change a thing. Honestly, wouldn't change a thing. I believe her base power is incredibly fair and can be fun to play against. I believe her add-ons are all really balanced. They're not too weak, they're not too strong. Honestly, the Plague is kind of perfect as she is and doesn't need changing. So, simple, easy one. Okay, so the next one, Ghostface. A little bit more complex than Plague, of which I said was perfect. Ghostface's got a lot of changes that I would recommend. From the survivor's perspective, they need to fix the reveal mechanics. They are still busted after all this time, and the Ghostface can be crouched in front of you 6 meters away, not behind any cover, and you can't reveal him. And it's just incredibly broken. They need to fix it. So yeah, just fix that. It's awful. Secondly, what I would do as well, again, this is more from a survivor's perspective, but I would make it so that marks slowly wear off to 50%, not completely, but just to 50% over the course of, let's say, a minute, because there's nothing more annoying when you're playing against him, and honestly a bit too powerful, I think, if you're 99'd marked for 10 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes is extreme, but a few minutes, and then out of the blue, even as far as you're aware, you've not been stalked, he just walks up to you and one-taps you. Very, very frustrating, and I believe marks should wear off down to 50%. So if he leaves you for too long, he has to at least remark you a little bit. He can't just come up to you and just one-tap you, because it's a bit silly, to be completely honest. The other one would be just general improvements of his add-ons, just essentially just buff them all a little bit. They're all a bit crap. Improve his leaning spots is another one, because playing as Ghostface, there are certain things that you think, I should be able to lean around this, and you just can't. So they need to actually go around all the maps and fix the leaning spots. The other one would be, and this is more of a buff to Ghostface, yeah, hitting someone with an M1 should not remove the mark. So currently, if you've got someone, let's say 75% mark, you hit them with an M1, it removes the mark. I don't reckon it should do that. The other one would be, if you miss an M1 attack, it brings you out of your shroud. I don't believe it should do that. I believe if you miss someone while you're in shroud, you should just remain in shroud. Another change would be, this is kind of similar to Wraith, in what I suggested with Wraith. I reckon when the Ghostface is in his shroud, he should be allowed faster kicking animations, so gen, pallet, walls. I believe maybe while he's in a shroud, maybe just 25%, 15%, something like that, just a little bit faster. Give him a unique little power like that. That would be really cool. And then we have the Demogorgon. First things first, fix his hitboxes. They're way too generous. When I play as him, when I play against him, it's oh, that should not have hit. Especially when I play as him, I'm yeah, I shouldn't have hit that. I definitely didn't hit that. So they need to fix his hitboxes. They're too big. I believe he should have the ability to remove his portals from a distance. So, for example, if you're looking at a portal and you can teleport to it, also give him the ability to look at portals from a distance and remove them. Because currently the only way to do that is to essentially recycle in new ones to replace the old ones. It's a bit of a weird mechanic, so you just allow him to remove them. And lastly, this is something that I'd wanted for a long time. The lifeguard's whistle should be base kit like it used to be. So it used to be that you could always get Killer Instinct if someone was near your portals, if they were cleansing it. I think not near it, but if they were just cleansing it. I think they should add that back in. I don't see why that got changed to an add-on. That should, if someone's cleansing your portal, then why shouldn't you know that someone's there doing that? Because like either you have to drop chase to stop them from doing that, or just kind of let them get rid of it anyway. So it makes no sense that it's not base kit anymore. So yeah, bring Lifeguard Whistle back into be base kit. And then we have Oni. Very, very complex. If you read about his power on the wiki, it's like the longest one, pretty much. Like, his power is incredibly complex. So what I would suggest for him, there are 4 changes I would recommend. First of all, it's the passive blood gain. And so what I mean by that is you don't just have to collect blood to get your power. You do passively just gain your power slowly anyway. Currently, it's 0.2 units per second. I would say increase that to 0.3 units per second so he gets his power passively just that a little bit faster. The other thing I would change to bring, honestly, it's a little bit of a nerf, a tiny nerf, is I would lower the speed when absorbing blood. So currently, while he's absorbing blood, obviously it slows him down a little bit. But his walking speed while he's absorbing the blood is 3.45 meters a second. I would say bring that down to something like 3.25, just a little bit slower. Because currently, collecting blood doesn't slow you down that much at all. The other thing I would do is currently, when survivors are unhooked, there's something which is called the Blood Orb Grace Period, which is how long after they're unhooked do they then start dropping blood again. I can't remember what it is currently. I believe it's something like 15 seconds. Or maybe even 10. I would say increase that to 30 seconds. So you don't just give the Oni his power by being unhooked. I think that's a bit silly and should be increased. The last one, so this is another part of the complex Oni power, is that everything survivors do causes you to drop a certain amount of blood. For example, dropping pallets, vaulting pallets, going in and out of lockers, crouching, sprinting, they all increase or decrease how much blood you drop. One of them is crouching. When you crouch, you currently drop 1 blood orb. It is limited, so if you're just teabagging, then like it won't just drop like 10 million blood orbs. It essentially has a cooldown. But I would say increase that one to 2. Currently you drop 1 orb when you crouch, and it's limited to like 1 a second. I would say increase that to 2. So if a survivor's teabagging, they drop more blood as a punishment for being a douchebag. Those are my recommended changes for Oni. Just slight changes here and there. He's pretty much fine as he is. Just a couple little bits and bobs. Then we have the Deathslinger. First of all, I would just remove the mend mechanic from him, but make it an add-on instead. Mend mechanic in this game, at least killer enforced mend mechanic, I think is a bit outdated and should be removed. Just keep it for things like Dead Hard and other things like that, which are survivor enforced. I think that would be a good change. I would increase his maximum Redeemer shot range, which is currently 18 meters. I put it up to 24. Have a bit of fun with him. Why not? I'd also give him the snake oil as base kit, and then also give him the Eerie coin base kit. The Eerie coin is if you hit someone over a certain range. I believe it's 12 meters. I didn't write it down, but I believe it's 12 meters. They become exposed. Awesome add-on. Really fun. Very unique. Not really all that powerful because it's so difficult to use. Hence why I think it should be base kit. How unique would that be, and how cool would that be if the Eerie coin was just base kit? Maybe increase the range to make it even harder if it's base kit, because yeah, it's pretty unique, pretty rare that you're going to actually get that hit in. But yeah, a couple of changes here and there to him. He's fairly well balanced. I believe he just needs changes to make him more fun. It's the only real changes he needs, just more fun. So then we have Pyramid Head, quite a complex killer when you think about his power and his, especially his trails, his spaghetti. So the first thing I would do is increase how much spaghetti he can have on the map and for how long it lasts. Currently it's in a unit system, and I believe like every half a meter is 1 unit, something like that. I could be slightly wrong. It's 100 units currently, and it lasts for 75 seconds. There are add-ons to change those, but honestly they're kind of crap because everyone uses range add-ons. Why would you not? It's the only thing you're ever going to want to use on him. So those 2 things should be increased. Yeah, currently it's 100 units for 75 seconds. I believe it should be 150 units for 120 seconds. Allow his trails to actually remain on the map for a longer time and more of it. make it more of a problem. Currently, the trails that he leaves for survivors, they're not really a problem. You can just run around them, you can crouch through them. They don't cause any problems. Whereas if there are more of them and they last longer, maybe they will cause some problems. The other one I would do would be there's quite a lot of changes for Pyramid Head, I do apologise, but the second one would be to put a new add-on which adds a meter of width. So 0.5 meters either side. Currently there are 2 range add-ons. What I would say is maybe add a width add-on as well, so you can have 1 range and 1 width. I think that would be pretty cool. I would increase the minimum power required to be able to use his Punishment of the Damned. That's when he baps his sword and fires out the shockwave. Make it so that you need at least 10% power to use it, because currently you only need at least, as long as you have 1%, just 1% of power, you can use it. And it makes his gameplay quite uninteresting, to be honest, because you can just keep spamming his power through pallets and things like that as survivors, until eventually you just land one. It's very brain dead gameplay, so I think they should make it so you need at least 10% power to be able to use Punishment of the Damned, stop him being as spammy, just, you know, make him a little bit more skill required. And I do say that as someone who mained Pyramid Head for a very long time. He's incredibly easy to use currently because you can just spam him, whereas it would make him a bit harder to use if you needed more power. I would also, on the same sort of line of making him less spammy, I would increase his Punishment of the Damned cooldown, which is currently 2.25 seconds, so 2.25 seconds, to 3 seconds. Just a tiny little increase on the cooldown of Punishment of the Damned. On the flip side, I'd make it then more powerful in terms of range. Currently, Punishment of the Damned is base at 8 meters, and I would change it to 10 meters. So you're making him less spammy, but then on the flip side, making it so your more accurate, less spammy shots are more rewarding because they have that slight extra range. Yeah, those are the changes I would recommend for Pyramid Head. Yeah, like I said, just to make him require a bit more skill to use his power, because yeah, currently, like I said, when I play as Pyramid Head, if you come against a good survivor, you can just spam your power until you eventually get them. It's really not that hard to use him. Make him harder to use, but also then kind of more rewarding for doing so and learning to, you know, get better with his power. Punishment of the Damned, it's one of the coolest powers in the game, and I'd love to see those changes. Okay, next up we have Blight. Now I believe his core mechanics are very well balanced. His main problem is the add-ons. They are too strong. So there are 4 add-ons that I would remove or heavily nerf, being Compound 33, Compound 21, Outring, and the Eerie Blight tag. In my opinion, the Eerie Blight tag is far too easy to use. Yes, it is a pink, it's an ultra rare, but regardless, it's way too easy to use. You put that on, you just win every game. The other thing I would do is just to change his base speed to 110. Currently he's 115. I don't understand why he's 115 when he can, you know, Blight Rush. It's not really fair that he also is 115 as well as being able to do that, so change him to 110. Those are pretty much the only changes I would suggest for the Blight. And we're moving on to Charlotte and Victor, aka the twins. There's a few things I would change to just make her more fun in general to sort of play against and as, hopefully. Number 1, I would change the Killer Instinct range with Victor down to 8 meters. It's currently 12, so for example, if you slug someone with Victor, if they're within 12 meters, currently you get Killer Instinct, so you know where they are. I would recommend moving that down to 8. I'd also decrease the speed of Victor from 150 down to 140%. He's too fast at the minute. It's way too much like pressure. I would allow Victor on top of objects, because currently if he goes on top of, let's say, like a table or something like that, he just, you know, he dies. Whereas I think he should be allowed on all of those objects. I don't understand why he's not. Maybe it's some sort of code related problem. But either way, they should try and fix it and make it so he can. I'd also reduce the max time that Victor can be held hostage by a survivor. What I mean by that is if you get jumped on by Victor as a survivor, your best play is literally just to leave him. Don't break him straight away. Let it automatically kill him after 30 seconds because, you know, you essentially remove Charlotte's power for 30 seconds every time. I think they should reduce that down to 20 seconds. The last change I'd recommend is that Charlotte's husk cannot be left closer than 12 meters to the hook. It's pretty strong that you can just send out Victor and leave Charlotte right next to the hook, so I believe you should not be able to do that anymore. We then have the Trickster. There's quite a few changes I'd recommend making to the Trickster. First of all, there's an add-on called Edge of Revival. I'd recommend that be base kit. What that does is if you miss the survivor but hit an object near them, the knife technically explodes and cause 0.5 laceration. If you didn't know, you need 6 points of laceration. One direct hit is a point. There are certain add-ons such as this that cause half a point of laceration. And this is one of them, Edge of Revival. I believe it should be base kit. However, on the flip side of that, because of this and because of the other add-on I will recommend later, I believe the laceration points required should be 7 instead of 6. Main event should just overall be quicker. It shouldn't last as long. The knife should throw faster. He should also move quicker while he's doing it. I don't have exact numbers for that, but just in general, overall, it should be quicker. The reload time should be 3 seconds instead of 4. Projectile speed should be increased to 60 meters a second from 55, so it's just a tiny bit quicker. I'd also reduce the spread of the knives by about 10% because the spread of the knives, they're fairly inaccurate. So just make them a little bit more accurate. And then the other add-on I was talking about would be, it's one called Cut Through You. What that means is knives go through survivors, and if it hits another survivor behind the initial hit one, that one behind also receives plus 0.5 laceration, so half a laceration point. It's just good, for situations where people are taking hits and things like that. It allows you to still slightly apply some pressure to the survivor in front. Killers like Sadako, for example, can easily get around people taking hits, so I don't see why Trickster should also not be able to do that, so yeah, allow him to do that. And then Nemesis. Not many changes with Nemesis, to be honest. I think he's in a good spot. The only things I would change really are Marvin's Blood. I would make base kit add-on. So you just get out tier 1 quicker, which is pretty useful. Make it tier 1 only, however. Currently it's for any tier, but I'd make it tier 1 to tier 2 only. I would have tier 3 become a bit more stronger, because currently tier 2 to tier 3 there's not much benefit other than a slightly longer whip. I'd have less slowdown when prepping the tentacle, so for example while you're holding it you walk slower. I don't know the exact numbers, but I would suggest that he's not slowed down quite as much as he currently is. I'd also make the whip faster. By that I mean the whole animation of his whip. So when he pulls it out and then sort of puts it away after using it, for example, I'd just speed up that animation just ever so slightly, make it feel a bit more threatening. The Shattered Stars badge, which currently, what that one does, it is an ultra rare, but I am going to suggest it changed slightly and made base kit. Currently what it does is at 60 seconds after a generator is completed, you get faster zombies, basically. They currently move to plus 1.5 meters a second for 60 seconds after a gen's done. What I'd suggest is change that to 1 meter a second and just make it base kit. So that, because currently the zombies don't really cause any problems for anyone, do they? Other than in chase as a bit of an anti-loop thing. That's about it. You'll get a little bit of value out of that being base kit, but not that much. Not enough that it should be an Eerie, anyway. The last thing I would change is to remove the Killer Instinct when you use the antivirus. That's something that I also suggest for Wesker. I don't really think it's fair that survivors go and have to go on this little side quest to remove a virus, and then by doing so they get punished by the killer knowing exactly where they are. It promotes tunneling, and also it's, it makes really no sense to me that, survivors get punished for completing what's essentially a little side quest in the game. I'm going to call it a side quest, but you know what I mean. So yeah, those are my changes for Nemesis that I would recommend. Okay, so Pinhead, I've got a fair few changes recommended to this as well. The first one being when Pinhead decides to teleport to someone solving the box. I believe the teleportation should be faster, so it's more of a surprise attack. I'd also allow the Pinhead to teleport to a survivor simply because they're holding the box. However, currently when you teleport to a survivor solving the box, it freezes them in place for a second. What I'd suggest is that if the Pinhead chooses to teleport before they start solving the cube, it doesn't lock the survivor in place, so the survivor can essentially still actually run away, so that therefore it's a little bit balanced in that way. I'd also rework Engineer's Fang. I changed the max placement distance to 12 meters and the placement speed to 7 meters a second from 8 meters a second, so it's slower. So you can't put it as far. It's a bit slower when you place it out. The other thing that I would do is change the chain hunt charge time. Currently it's 1.5 minutes to charge the chain hunt if no one does the box. I changed that from 90 seconds to 120 seconds, just an extra 30 seconds, just to allow that to be done. We then move on to the artist. Honestly, I think the artist is pretty well balanced, really fun to play as and against. The only thing I would change about the artist is make it so that survivors who walk through the stationary crows, which are ready to be fired, currently you get crows on you by doing that. I think that should be changed, so you can delete the crows which haven't been shot simply by walking through them, and not get punished by doing so. Okay, so next we have Sadako. There's a few changes I would recommend for her. One being that the post-projection cooldown changes from 100 seconds to 80 seconds. What that means is after you teleport from a TV, how long it takes to then turn back on and be usable again. Currently it's 100 seconds, I changed that to 80. Currently, there is a system set in place that TVs cannot spawn within 16 meters of hooks. What I would suggest is that that's increased to 24 meters. Because tunneling with Sadako is incredibly easy, so definitely increase that to 24 meters. The other thing I would do is add a clearer identifier when you're playing as Sadako if you're manifested or demanifested. Yes, there's static, and there's also, you get the black smoke around the edges of your screen to say that you're undetectable. However, I think there should be a clearer identifier, because when you're focusing on the game, you might not notice that. I don't play Sadako myself, I don't really find it all that fun to play as, I'll be honest. But when I watch streamers play as Sadako, one of the big things I notice is that they're not always 100% sure if they're manifested or demanifested. So yeah, just add a clearer identifier to that. Post-projection speed boost. So essentially what I mean by that is when you come out of a TV, you get a little speed boost. Currently, you're boosted to 6.9 meters a second for 1.5 seconds. I'd recommend just increasing that to 2 seconds. That would also sort of counter the TVs being further away from the hooks thing, but not so that it's null, essentially. Okay, Dredge. Not many changes. The only one I'd really suggest is quite an important one, is that I would allow him to teleport to either locker, rather than being forced to teleport to the locked locker within a pair of lockers. I would also increase his visibility to survivors within Nightfall from 20 meters to 24 meters. So survivors, essentially what I mean by that is survivors can see the Dredge while you're in Nightfall just 4 meters further away. I would reduce, however, the survivor to survivor visibility within Nightfall. Currently it's 54 meters, you can see each other from quite far away. 54 meters is roughly like the distance of 5 tiles. Roughly, maybe like between 4 and 5 tiles. So it's pretty far. I'd reduce that down to 32 meters, so about 2 tiles. What I'd also then do is his Nightfall charge rate. Basically for each injured survivor, it charges faster. Currently if 4 are injured, you get 4 charges a second. If all 4 survivors are injured, I recommend increasing that to 5 charges a second. Okay, so next we have the Knight. The first change will just be general AI improvements. Currently they're a bit janky in some of the things they do, so definitely just overall improvements with the guard AI. I'd also recommend changing it so the survivors can not see the trail that the Knight puts out for his guards. They can also not see the detection circle, because I don't understand like why they can, it's a bit weird. I would, however, keep the audio for the trail, so you know, if you've got good hearing, then you can definitely hear the trail. I'd also change the minimum guard placement to 4 meters, so you can't just simply right click and put one straight down. You have to actually create a trail. The reason I say that is because currently the main gripe that people have with the Knight is that you go to a pallet, you right click your zone, or you go to a potential loop such as a TL wall, you right click in your zone. It's very, very boring to play against. So by recommending that the trail goes to 4 meters, it means it takes a little bit longer just to put it down. And just hopefully would maybe just prevent that incredibly boring zone style that he has. Then we have Wesker, aka the Mastermind. There's a few things I would change. As I said earlier with Nemesis, I do not believe antivirus should cause killer instinct. By no means. It just promotes tunneling, and also punishes the survivor for completing one of the little like mini quests within the game. I don't understand why they get punished for doing that. It makes no sense, to be completely honest. The other thing that I would then change, I'd make it so the max virus, which is known as critical infection, slows you down by 6% rather than 8%, and also doesn't make you one-hittable with his bound, because quite frankly, it's really not hard to hit people with Wesker's bound. So the fact that if you can get someone to critical infection and just one-hit them, it's a bit silly. It's way too powerful considering how easy it is to hit people with the bound. I'd also fix the hitboxes for the survivors and the objects. You know, windows/pallets. The hitboxes are a bit ganky at the minute. They still need to be worked on. Behavior, please fix. Okay, last. The Skull Merchant. Where to start with the Skull Merchant? In my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinion, the worst killer DBD have ever created. Honestly, just awful to play against. Everyone hates this killer. They 3-gen and games take an hour every time, and it's just incredibly tedious and just boring and brain dead to play against. I have a big list of changes. What we'll start with first is the most obvious. The 3-gen gameplay, it's gotta go. It just has to go. It is just... What I'd suggest is that when there are 4 gens left, you reduce the amount of drones she has to 3, allowing 1 gen to be undroned. When there's 3 gens, you reduce it to 2. And there are no add-ons to change this. You get 4 drones at the start of the game, that's it, and then they reduce as you complete the generators. That way, no more boring 3-gen gameplay. Most Skull Merchant players honestly just set up a 3-gen at the start of the game and make the game take an hour, and it's just incredibly boring. I believe also the exposed status should take longer to take effect. It should take 12 seconds rather than 10 seconds, and also it shouldn't last as long. It should last 40 seconds instead of 60. In my personal opinion, I'd love to know what you think about that, but currently I believe that's a bit silly and it is too quick and lasts too long. Now, this is something, honestly, I'm expecting them to change, regardless of anyone's suggestions. The ultrasonic trap speaker, that brown add-on, that should be at least a purple. Don't get rid of it. It's pretty unique, it's pretty cool, but I think it should be a purple, bare minimum. It's an incredibly strong add-on. For it to be a brown, it's like one of the best add-ons like in the game, and it's a brown. It's very strange. I believe there should be a new add-on for her, which probably should be a pink, possibly a purple. And what that does is it reduces your overall drones to 2. And then obviously isn't affected by the 4/3-gen thing I said earlier. You just have 2. And then what that should do is allow her to see the auras of anyone inside the zone after, let's say, 6 seconds, if they're within the zone. They should add a timer to the hack process. Maybe 8 seconds. Because currently what you can do is you can start hacking one of the drones and just not input any of the buttons, and you essentially take the drone hostage and make it not be able to do anything, which is kind of one way of kind of breaking the 3-gen meta at the moment. If you have one person, let's say, who has proved themselves, and they sit on a drone and just don't solve it, it gets rid of the drone and makes it do nothing while it's being solved but not actually being solved. That way you provide then the prove thyself out to someone sitting on the gen, and they can crank out the gen. And then they repress the alliance and run off when the killer inevitably comes back to kick it. So, yeah, I mean, yes, they need to stop the 3-gen meta, but at the same time, yeah, they also do need to add a timer to that hack process. A few things that I would just suggest on the overall vibe of the killer. First of all, when you become exposed, I think there should be some sort of little alarm noise. Nothing too obnoxious, just, you know, a little wee-woo noise. Just to say, hey, you're exposed. I would also put a longer cooldown on redeploying hacked drones. Currently they get hacked and you can just slap them out again straight away. So there's no reward as a survivor for hacking the drones. Really, there's a little bit of a reward, but not enough of a reward. So the cooldown should be longer. The last thing, this is more about the look of her. In my opinion, she looks very cool. I'm a massive fan of sci-fi, so I think she looks badass. What I would do, however, is change her so she's a bit scarier. She's not really scary, she's just sci-fi at the minute. What I